Hey guys, I am Jordan. I am a second-year flower farmer based out of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and today I wanted to talk to y'all about 5 actionable steps on how to start selling to florists. So today we're going to cover determining who your customer is, finding your customer, building the relationship, growing the flowers, and starting selling. Okay, so first thing, let's talk about how do you determine who your customer is. So when I think about selling to florists, I think about 2 different types of florists. So there are wedding and event florists, and then there are your everyday florists. Those are florists that are doing things like birthdays and funerals and, the ones that are sending flowers out the door every day. And then your wedding and event florists, they're ones that are gonna have orders with your farm on an intermittent basis. So you're not gonna have consistent orders from them every single week. So when you're deciding if you want to start selling to florists, you really have to think about who is your customer, right? So for us, I initially thought we want to go strictly with wedding and event florists. That was the direction that we really wanted to go with our farm. I grew our flowers based on that. But then once I got into season, I realized that we should also be selling to everyday florists. And the thought process behind that is that your everyday florists are going to be placing orders with you every single week. Whereas your event and wedding florists, they're going to place really large orders with you, but it may be, they have an order one week and then they don't have an order for another couple of weeks. So you really want to have a mix of both types of customers in your business, but let's also talk about the challenges with that. So there's also challenges to having both types of those because you're growing different things for them. So when you're growing for wedding and event florists, you're growing whites and peaches and creams and really light pinks and really soft colors. And when you're growing for an everyday florist, you might want to be growing bolder colors, things that people are going to want for their birthdays. And it's just a different type of flower that maybe not type of flower, maybe similar types of flowers, but it's a different color palette. And so you really have to think, do you want to do both? Can you do both? Have you grown for both? So those are some of the things you want to consider when you are choosing your florist. Now, we're really fortunate that we have, and I think that you'll find this too, is that there's some florists that do both, right? So we have, I want to say, maybe 3 to 4 to 5 of the florists that we sell to do wedding and events, but they also do everyday flowers. So that is a really awesome florist to partner with because it's likely that while they do weddings and events and they have those cool color palettes, they also are doing that same similar color palette for their everyday flowers. And so it makes it to where you can kind of focus your growing and only grow the colors that they would want. And they're going to use those same similar colors for wedding and events, but also for their everyday flower orders. So that's been really a good thing for us to find, is finding those florists who do both. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is finding your customer. So how do you find your customer, right? You're just getting started out with your farm. How do you start selling to florists? How do you find the customer? So I'm specifically going to talk about finding them on social media today because that's my background and my experience. I can tell you a little bit about finding them in person and what that was like for me. But mostly I found all of our customers on social media. So when we very first started our farm, before we had grown a single flower for the farm, I reached out to several florists. I just wrote up an introduction about me and I drank a glass of wine and I sent out a message to all the florists that I knew of at that point that I thought were the customers that we would want to sell to. So one of the things that you can do is we specifically find our florists on Instagram. They tend to be there over other social media platforms. I think it's because Instagram is so photo based and really based on pretty pictures. And so obviously their flowers are pretty, so it makes sense that your florists are going to be there. So for the florist side of the business, we don't necessarily have a huge focus on Facebook. That's not really where I don't think I've ever interacted with a florist on Facebook. Ever, maybe once or twice, but not from a selling perspective. So we're definitely interacting with them on Instagram. So for us, it was just typing up a post, sending it out to them, and introducing ourselves to them. So once you get on Instagram and you're trying to find your customers, some things that I did was you can search on hashtags. So like we're in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, hashtag Tulsa Florists, I can find our florists there. I can look through the work that they're doing. I can see which one I think might match the style of what flowers we're gonna grow. Okay, so now we're at the point of you've determined who your customer is. You've found them on social media, and now it's time to build the relationship. So I think you have to decide whether you want to build that relationship via social media or online or on both. So I tend to be a little bit more on the shy side. So for me, it made sense for me to build that relationship with them online. I did also try in person. So I went in person and met several florists. I'll be honest, that was a little bit intimidating for me and not necessarily, something that I continue doing. I think it's something I'll do probably again this year. But it's obviously harder. And so I didn't mind kind of dipping my toes in with building the relationship via Instagram. So what does that look like? So I think when you're trying to build the relationship, so for me, what we did was we just started posting regularly. So I have a marketing degree, so I have a little bit of a marketing background, but we focused on 3 content pillars. So those content pillars were flowers, farm planning, and family. So talk a little bit about each so you can understand why I chose those pillars. So for flowers, I really obviously wanted them to see, here's the flowers that we're growing. I want them to see that, we're growing high quality flowers, flowers in their color palette, flowers that they want, flowers that are hard for them to source through wholesale. So things like, I focus a lot on showing our dahlias on social media because those aren't necessarily things that florists are getting wholesale. And if they are getting them wholesale, they're not at the quality that ours are locally grown. The next thing that we focused on was farm planning. So it might seem like a little odd, like why would you share with florists what you're planting on your farm? But what I really wanted them to see is I wanted them to know the flowers that we were growing. So I wanted them, to not forget us while it's in the growing season and not necessarily in the selling season. So I really focus on showing them like, here's what we're doing, and some days that might be showing them that, we're taking frost cloth on and off our tunnel, but I'm protecting the flowers that I'm growing for them. So I think that it's important to just be consistent with showing up. And one of those pillars is farm planning for us. So we're showing them, that we are consistently invested in our farm and actively growing for them. We're not just, sitting around not doing anything when we're not in the selling season. And I think it's important to show them that because I think it helps them be invested in you and in your business. The third thing that I wanted to show was our family. And I think that can be a little bit controversial, showing your kids on social media. Never quite sure if you should do that, but I decided that I did want to show our family. I wanted our florists to know me and to know my family and to know who they're buying from when they're buying from us. So I want them to know that, Conley was right alongside Jordan when she was sowing her sweet peas. And I wanted them to know, that Peyton's out there with me every Sunday helping me plant things. And I wanted them to know that, Kaylee comes and takes videos, so that I have content to post. I just think it's really important to show that side of it, that this is really, truly a family business. And there is no way I could get as much done as I get done working an 8 to 6 p.m. job every single day. There's no way I could get it done if it wasn't for my family pitching in and helping. And so I just think it's really important that you're sharing these things. And so that may look different for you. That you may have different content pillars, but I think it's important that you figure out what are the content pillars? How does it relate to the customer that I'm selling to? And then stay consistent with rotating between those content pillars. So that's what we've done. So if you look at my Instagram feed, you will see that it's family, farm planning, and flowers. And I keep it consistent with that. I haven't always been the best at posting consistently to our feed. I'm actually actively working on getting better about being consistent about putting posts into our feed. But I tend to be a lot in stories and less on our feed. So, I think it's important you do a little bit of both so that they're getting to know you both ways. Also, part of building the relationship is interacting with them, interacting with their content, commenting on things, share. One of the things I really like to do, I love the florists that we're selling to. So I actively want people to be buying from them. And so, if they're posting that they're having a sale, I'm going to be sharing it on my page. If they're using our flowers, I'm going to be sharing it to my stories. Like, I tag them, they tag me. Like, we have built a relationship through our businesses where it's like, I want to see their business be successful and they also want to see my business be successful. So I think it's really important to be like constantly interacting with them, interacting with their content, because when their content gets interacted with, it helps boost them as well. Okay, so the fourth thing I wanted to talk about is growing the flowers. So obviously, you know, we've built the relationship, we found the customer, and now we need to grow the flowers. So I think one of the things you want to do related to the flowers, and what I did early on, was once I found those customers, I spent time in their feed on Instagram to see what flowers are they using regularly. What's their color palette? Those are the things you should be growing. So you need to be looking at what your customer is using. What is that florist using? If that florist has never used a lily, maybe don't grow lilies. Or if you're going to, talk with them about it before you grow them, right? So we're investing big into lilies this year because it's something that I really have wanted to add to the farm. I wanted to do it last year. I made myself wait a year and get a little more experience under my belt before we did this. But did I talk to our florists before? Yes, I absolutely did, because some florists don't want to use lilies. And so a lot of our florists here that I work with don't necessarily use lilies a whole lot. Some of them do, but not all of them. And so some of those that were more of like my regular customers, I wanted to confirm with them, like, are you interested in lilies before I grew them? So that's something I think is really important. Like, if you're unsure on growing something, you've built a relationship with them now. Like, they rely on you to supply the flowers. If you're not sure if they want it, ask them. I think it's that easy. Reach out to them, ask them. You're not bothering them. Like, you're going to grow these flowers for them. They love you for that. Reach out to them, have a conversation with them, like, get their input. I've absolutely done that numerous times with our local florists in the area. Like, I'll throw up a poll on my stories, like, do you like this flower or do you like this flower? And I like to be funny when I'm doing it. Like, does this one make you want to barf? And I give them like the barf emoji, or like, you know, does this one make you feel like all hearts, you know? So like, be fun and interact with them. But when you're growing the flowers, you really have to make sure that you're growing what they want. Okay, so last thing is you're going to start selling. So you've found your customer, you've built the relationship, you're growing the flowers, and now you need to actually start selling. So there's a couple of actionable things that you will want to do here. So the first thing is you need to make an availability sheet. So how do you do that? So there's a couple of different things you could do. It's as simple as you could type something up in Excel, send them an Excel file that has, you know, all the information in it. You could use Word, you could use Canva. When we first started out, I put everything into Canva. Really liked that option. It's really easy. I can send it to them easily. That works well. I think where I landed was using actually, and can't remember the exact specifics on it, but the email platform that we have, like, it's kind of just like a newsletter that I send out to them, and I ended up landing on that for an availability sheet, because what was cool about it was after I made it, so obviously it would like, for everyone that I had their email, I could just send the email out to them in the platform. But if I didn't have their email, I could actually just generate a link. And so for anyone that I was sending an availability sheet to that wasn't via email, that I was sending like an Instagram, I could just copy that link and send them the link. So I ended up switching over from Canva to that later on in the season, and I thought that that was a really good option. It was a lot easier for me to update. Obviously, like, once you get a little further on, and I know for us, like, I would love to get to a point where we're more like click, shop, add to cart, but I want to have a little more experience, feel a little more comfortable in our availability before we'd ever go that route. So future me wants to do that, but I don't think we'll get there this year. So, okay, so you've got an availability sheet, what to include on it. So you've chosen your platform and then things that you want to include on it. So you want to include the flower name. Sometimes you want to include like the botanical name, like that might be how they're used to seeing it. So just something to consider. You want to include a photo of the flower. So it's important that you're using like your photos. If you don't have a photo of that flower yet, you can use a stock photo, that's fine. I just know that once you do have photos of that flower that are like actually your photos, those are so much more impactful because they're seeing what you're actually growing. So that's really important. So I think it's important to also include the color of the flower, just because sometimes pictures can be not as clear. So, you know, if you're unsure, I think it's important to just include the color. So also include the amount you're selling it for and the quantity that are in a bunch, because sometimes bunches are in 10, sometimes they're in 5. So it's just important to let them know, like, this is my bunch price, but you know, maybe there's only 5 stems in a bunch. Okay, so you have your availability sheet. The next thing I recommend prior to like starting selling is that because I didn't do this in the beginning, so I'm gonna tell you, like, pro tip, make a set delivery schedule. This will be so helpful for your life to have a little bit of balance, because I know for me in the beginning, it's like, whew, if I'm getting an order, like, I am filling it. Like, I just am happy to be selling. But, you know, as the season goes on and you get more and more customers, it's really important for you to have a set schedule. It'll just give you so much more balance. So for us, what we did is we would harvest every Monday and Wednesday, and we would deliver to florists on Tuesday and Thursday. So that would give a good option for like your daily florists who want a delivery on Tuesday to have flowers in the shop. It gave them that option. But the Thursday delivery also gave the option for the florists who were ordering more for wedding work to get those flowers in, get them prepped and conditioned prior to their events on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So I thought that that really worked well. I'll tell you, one of the things that I haven't quite figured out yet, and I'm still trying to figure it out and hone in on the best way to handle this, is figuring out the best time of day to deliver the flowers. So since I do work a job during the day, delivery days can be really challenging for me if I don't have someone that can deliver the flowers. So oftentimes I'm lucky I have a teenager who is fully online for school this year. So with that, I'm really fortunate that she is able to do deliveries for me most days, so I don't have to worry about doing the delivery myself. But on days where she isn't available to do the delivery and I need to be the one to do it, that can be really challenging because I'm trying to work and I can't necessarily give like a set time of day because my schedule varies every week. So I'm still working on figuring out how to do that, and maybe, you know, thinking of like just some different options, trying to think out of the box of how do I get the flowers to the florist without me actually having to be the one to take them, because I don't necessarily have time to do that in the middle of the day. So still trying to figure that out. More to come on that as I figure it out, but I don't have it all figured out yet. Okay, so sending out your availability sheet. So I think my preference is emailing it out. Obviously it's easier if you have an email platform and you've collected all the emails from your florists. You can just put all of the emails in there, you know, do your availability sheet in one click and it's out. That's awesome if it all worked that way. I will just say that some florists are really just on Instagram and they're not necessarily using their email. And so for those, like, I will take that link out that I've, you know, created in my email platform, and I will post that link into Instagram messages with the florist so that they're getting it and then they prefer to order that way. So we do both of those options. I will tell you that some of my florists that I know are just super busy, right? Like, they're similar to me, of like, they're running a shop, they have kids, they're so busy. I will even just text them the link to it because I know how busy they are, and I know they're not gonna check their social media, and I know they're not gonna check their email, but I know that they still might wanna order flowers, right? Like, they need flowers. So even if we want it to be one single way that our availability sheet is going out, it isn't always gonna be that way. And sometimes you have to remember that, like, these are your customers, and so you wanna do whatever is easiest for them. All right, so you've sent your availability sheet out, and now you need to actually take the orders. So once the orders start coming in, you wanna make sure, obviously, that you have the stems to meet the order. So that can be challenging when you're first starting out because you don't always know if you have enough. Like, I know several times, just like, well, I don't know, or it's very overwhelming once those orders start coming in. So don't be afraid to say, like, I don't know if we'll have enough stems to meet that order, but like, I will let you know after harvest tonight. My florists have been absolutely okay with that answer. Like, that's fine. I'll be honest, I haven't quite figured out the best way to track orders yet. I've tried a couple of different things of how to keep track of them. I'll tell you kind of what I ended up with. Super simple, super basic, but I use the Notes app on my phone. When an order and I have all the dates in my phone. When an order comes in, I slot it in on that date. I type out what they've ordered from me, And that's actually kind of the best way that I figured out to keep track of it. I want to figure out something better, but that's what I've been doing. If you have other, if you're selling to florists and you have, hey, here's how I keep track of orders, drop it in the comments, because I would love to know what other people are doing, because I haven't figured out a super great way to do that. So if I figure it out this year, I will definitely share it. But for now, I'm just keeping it in the notes app on my phone. All right, and the last step is just to deliver the flowers. So, bring those flowers in. If there's anything special that you need to tell them about the flowers when you're there, let them know. I'm trying to think of some things. If I've come directly from the field and I want those flowers to get conditioned for like an hour before they use them, I'll be like, make sure you put this in the cooler, like we just came from the field. It's not very often that I'm coming directly from the field, but occasionally that will happen. Usually I've brought them home and put them in the cooler for at least an hour before I'm taking them somewhere, just to make sure they have proper conditioning. Now, obviously, it depends on your flowers, I should say. I sell dahlias a lot, so I'm usually making sure that I condition my dahlias for an hour before they've gone out the door to a florist. But when you're delivering that order, that is the time for you to have face-to-face interaction. So if they're not super busy, chat with them, talk with them about, new things that you're growing. Use that time to build the relationship with them. All right, so that is how to start selling to florists. I hope this was helpful. If it was, I would sure appreciate if you liked the video or gave us a follow, and I will talk to y'all next time.